Welcome back to the channel. Today we are building a chair. A garden chair, a comfy chair, not an Adirondack chair or anything like that. This is just a simple chair. So the only material you need for this chair is a 2 by 8 by 8 foot. You need two of those and two 2 by 6 by 8 foot. The 2 by 8s are what we want to use to make our legs, which is what we're cutting out here. I'm cutting them down to 3 foot sections, and that's going to leave you an extra 2 foot cutoff on each board. And you gotta love them camera angles, don't you? So right now, I'm getting my joiner, my handy dandy joiner. Of course, I don't have a joiner in the shop. This is how I joint wood. I'm not too worried about joining wood for this project, but what I do want to do is give me a good straight edge that I can reference to cut down or rip down the wood later on. So right now, I just want to take the roundovers off, and I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to cut these down to 7 inches wide. But the key to using this technique to joint wood or even just give you a straight edge is to run the wood and the joiner at the same time. And the level at the same time. They have to go through together. If you just run the wood against the level and you don't move the level forward with the wood, you're not going to get the straight edge you're looking for. So now we're ripping down the wood to be 7 inches wide. This will be for all of the leg and the back components. And we're going to cut a 30-degree angle on the chair backs. I'm going to try to do the rest of the audio in one take because it is crashing my laptop every time I try to do voiceover. So what you're about to see is I'm going to use some stop blocks. There will be a link to these in the description. There they are. There'll be a link to these in the description below. They're only 30 bucks on Amazon, which is super cheap. The woodpecker ones are far more expensive. I've been using these for quite a few months now, and they are deadly accurate. So I put the 3/4 block next to the blade and lowered it down to be exactly 3/4, which is what I want my half lap for my chair back and my chair legs to be. So I set the miter gauge to 30 degrees, and right now I'm cutting out the half lap on the bottom of both of the chair backs. And this is how I laid it out to show the line where I need it to sit. Thank you. And so now I'm doing the half laps on the table saw still, and if you notice, I'm doing a single pass at a time with just my single blade. You could use a dado here. I was just being very, very lazy. I was doing a single pass at a time. What you do need to know is on the chair legs, on the base of the chair, I left space at the back side, and you'll see it, and that's to help support the chair itself, and it makes it pretty solid. So once you have all your slats cut, you take a hammer and you knock them out. So using the cutoffs from the 2 by 8s, we're going to rip these down to be 18 inches, and we're going to cut them into 3-inch strips, and this is going to give us our structure between the two sides of the chair. So let's start ripping that. Oh wait, what's that behind your ear? You already had it done. Thanks. So this obviously will not be too comfortable to sit on as straight as it is. We need to make some curves to arch at the butt and to arch at the back and the head. So what we're going to do now is take some extra MDF that I have, and I'm going to make a template to cut out the arches and the curves exactly where I want them to go. And just to clarify, no, you do not need MDF. You could use 1/4-inch plywood, 1/2-inch plywood, whatever you have on hand. This is just what I had on hand. Oh my gosh. Look at that angle. So anyway, you could use whatever you have on hand. Any type of sheet good material is preferable. So now that we have our template made, what we're going to do is cut. Oh, I'm sorry. So now that we have the template made, and just to attach it, I threw in some quick pocket holes, nothing too fancy. What we're going to do now is cut out the arches that we want with the jigsaw. And so I'm just using the closest, roundest thing that I could find to make some of my rounded corners. The rest of it, I just freehanded, and I got lucky that I could even make the lines match up. You don't have to be too crazy accurate with it. Just make it until it looks like it feels comfortable. Then you grab your least favorite tool in the shop to cut it out. And yes, the jigsaw is my least favorite tool. But it does make it easier to cut it out. I don't have a bandsaw. This is just fine. The main thing I don't like about a jigsaw is it does cut at an angle and the dust builds up in the front, as you can see here. It's just an inconvenience. I'm still thankful to have the tool. It's just a little cumbersome to work with at times. And speaking of tools that I am thankful to have, this oscillating sander is one of them. I bought it last year to do some charcuterie boards, or actually the year before that, and I have used it quite often. Not every project, but when it comes in handy, it comes in handy. And I use it to flatten out where the jigsaw left little marks and striations and left little angles, because the blade does tend to walk a little to the side. So now we're just laying it out. We're going to trace our handy dandy line. If you ever traced on chemically treated wood, the mark does not really stand out. So as you can probably well see on treated lumber, it's very hard to get the marks, chemically treated lumber. Either way, where we made the mark off of our template, we don't want to cut on that line, but we want to cut about a 1/16 of an inch off of it. Then we're going to come back later and route it down using the template as a guide. It really seems like that's exactly what I just said. But using our least favorite tool again, we're going to cut out a little off that line because we do want to come back and use the router to really shore it up and make them exact. Now for the chair, these don't have to be exact, not compared to a piece of furniture, but you do want to get them as close as possible. So if you have a little nick here, a little heel or bump there, it's not that big of a deal. And at some point I had to open the door, get some ventilation in because it was getting stuffy. So I'm using a 1/2 inch router in this video. It's actually one that I picked up for very cheap from an estate sale years ago. So you don't have to have a lot of money to get into woodworking or to even build a project like this. You can get some of these tools for cheap at yard sales, garage sales, estate sales, things like that. I'm just really thankful to have the tools that I have. I never really would have thought that I would have the tools that I have, but doing this project I realized, man, I have way more tools than when I started out. So if you're a beginner and you're watching this and you see all the tools, you don't get overwhelmed, because I don't have the most tools, but I have enough to do just about any project. I'm still acquiring. I'm sure many people watching are acquiring as well. But there are people that are always like, man, you have to have an industrial size shop or thousands of dollars worth of tools. And the truth is you really don't. You just build up to stages like this. And speaking of building up, I still haven't gotten used to the space yet. It is so massive. I need to do some redesigning to make it more feasible, because I'm walking miles. Every project I'm walking miles across the shop. So some upcoming videos, we will be doing some shop projects to kind of get everything closer together, to get everything to where it just makes more sense. I have to walk around the table saw. I have to walk to the other side of the shop just to grab minor things. So I am going to work on improving the workflow much more. To do the structure, I just use pocket holes. There's nothing wrong with using pocket holes. I actually built an entire playground using pocket holes one time, and it held up just fine. This is a good spot to use them. So we're doing 1.5 inch pocket holes. We're using 2.5 inch pocket screws. And part of the benefit of having the shop and really getting used to the layout, I love having that corded drill plugged in with the Kreg bit already installed. I just grab it and I go to pocket hole town. So here we're just tightening it up. I use the front and the back of my work table to actually line up where the board should be. There was no exact science behind it. I just made it as close as it should be. And so here I'm cutting out the slats for the chair seat and the chair back. I actually used two 2x6x8s, and I cut these down to 1 inch thick by the already established 1.5 inch thickness of the board itself. So 1 inch by 1.5 inch by 24 inches. And I cut slats for days. Off camera, I actually cut down an entire other 2x6. And we're still cutting slats. One thing to keep in mind if you're using chemically treated wood is it is super wet and it will rust your tools if you don't take care of them. I use Jojoba oil, which I get off of Lee Nelson. You can use whatever type of oil or wax you want, but you want to make sure you coat your tools before you start running chemically treated wood through your tools. You know you got to test it out. You know you got to test it out. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought I made it too big, but it was just... It was perfect. It was perfect. Now, this shot really took 15 minutes to get all of these slats cut down. There were 80 slats total. It took 15 minutes total. I sped up the clip for your sake, but I really wanted to have a marathon type shot here where I'm pulling from one side going to the other. If you look on the table, you see that I have 2 boards nailed down to the work table itself to act as stops. That's what really helped this real tedious task become way more bearable. If I was trying to do this all by hand, it would have been a nightmare. But using these 2 boards as stops to butt the slat against the 2 boards and just run the router, the round over, 3/8 inch round over on the top side and on the ends, it worked like an absolute charm. Now, obviously, a router table would work way better, but I ain't got one. So I turned my work table into somewhat of a router table, or really just a work surface that made it more easy for me to do my job. And I will say you do want to take the extra time and throw in some roundovers because you will be sitting on this or other people will be sitting on it. You want to make it as professional and aesthetically pleasing as possible, which is going to lead us into the next shot here in about now. So we're building a jig to use on the drill press. Like I said, you don't have to have all these tools, but it is nice to have them, and it's very beneficial to use them if you do have them. What I'm building here is a jig that's going to go on my drill press that I could put the slat into and drill the hole for the screw that will screw into either the chair leg or the chair back. And you'll see here we're just dialing it in. We want to hold it right there in place. We're going to clamp it down, and we're going to go to drill press town. You could do all these with a drill. What I really wanted to accomplish here is when you look at the chair, all the screw holes are going into one line, up and down, straight as possible. I've tried to eyeball it before, and I've had screw holes an inch to the left, inch to the right, half an inch to the left, or too high, too low. This helped me to make sure all the holes were in the same position on every slat. And that's one thing that will help to set your work apart, especially if you want to build this to sell it. This would be an excellent item to sell because it's not that much of material. You're looking at maybe $100 per chair, $130 per chair. But you could sell these for $450 a piece, easy. I would say $400, $450 a piece. If they buy 2, give them a little discount. These would sell very easy because they're not very common. That's what's going to set this apart. But you want to make sure you take time to do these extra steps as much as possible to set your work apart. And you'll see how I kind of stage it in the end. Whenever you take your photos to list them online, you want to make sure you stage it as nice as possible. Do not take a picture in your shop and throw it online and wonder why it doesn't sell. Now for the slats, I want about a 1 inch overhang on each side, and I'm just screwing them down. I have a 1 inch overhang. I think it's about an 1/8 inch space between. I just grabbed a piece of cutoff from earlier, and that's what I use to set my spaces between each slat. You can see I put it at one on each side, screw it down, pull my little spacers up, Put them in the next one, put the next slat down. Super, super easy. Now the runners on the inside, those are 19 inches long. The boards for the legs and the boards for the chair are both 3 foot long. So 4 3-foot boards, 3 19-inch long by 3-inch wide boards, and then all the slat cutoffs. The cut list is in the description below. Take it, use it, go build a stinking chair and try to sell it. So, if you like the video and you like the chair, maybe you should build one too. It's feeling a little stuffy outside. Maybe I need a breeze. Slave! So this is a really great video. It does good. It'll sell well in your area. Figure out your perfect price point. In the meantime, slave! I think I'm feeling a little parched. Thank you. Water? I asked for cat milk!